My name is Sue Purdum. I'm an associate teaching professor here in the Smeal Business School, and my primary responsibilities are teaching undergrads in two areas. One is the Introduction to Supply Chain Management, and the other is a Strategic Procurement course. So I've been here now for probably, I know it's over 20 years, so time flies. I thought this was going to be, this is a second career for me, but now the second career is now longer than my first career. I spent 20 years in industry. My background is, I'm an industrial engineer by trade. My background is mostly manufacturing and engineering. I love to see how things work. I love to put things together. I love to as in industrial engineering, we optimize people, processes, and materials. So I love to see all the things come together. In those days, I was just so lucky because it was at the advent of certain things happening in industry, like with medical devices. It was at the advent of where fiber optics were being applied to medical device instruments to make surgery less invasive when the surgeon was operating on a knee or a hip, or mostly orthopedic. So I got involved in that. But then toward the end of my industry career, I thought, geez, I wonder what makes the customer tick. And I'd like to get to better understand, that crazy customer that keeps feeding us orders that are 100% over forecast. And, so I really wanted to see the demand side. So the last position that I held in industry was on the demand side, co-located at one of our largest customers at the time. You're asking how we're doing with the procurement transformation effort with Big Penn State, Old Main, Penn State University. So, my main responsibility is teaching, but also service is a big component too. And if you're research faculty, certainly you have to divide yourself into three areas: teaching, service, and research. Mine's a little bit easier as a full-time teaching professor, so teaching and service. So initially I got involved when COVID hit. And Penn State Health really needed some supply chain expertise effort to help them with finding PPE. It was such a crazy time back in March and April 2020, and it was all hands on deck. So Steve Tracy, who's the executive director of CSCR, and myself were called in with another about 15 or 20 individuals who met daily, 7 days a week for a period of time, just to try to help Penn State through the COVID rush of finding an adequate supply of PPE. Surgical gloves and isolation gowns and the booties. And at the time, there was some effort afoot in corporate procurement. Big Penn State had hired a consulting firm to help transform its organization to be more strategic, think more strategic, try to streamline, consolidate, simplify some of the processes in procurement. So I was asked to join this effort. There are 4 working groups. One focuses on processes and compliance. Another one focuses on business analytics and the KPIs that a good procurement organization should measure on a regular basis, both for themselves internally and how they are satisfying the internal customers, as well as externally the supply base. Then there was a third piece on organizational alignment. How should the new procurement organization be aligned to satisfy the user base and the supply base? And then my piece that I'm a part of is called category management. So there's a bucket of spend that Penn State spends on an annual basis. And within that bucket of spend, how would you define certain categories, and it could be commodity categories, to make management of all that spend a little bit easier for the procurement team and to align it better with the user base as well as the supply base? So that's what my group is tasked with. We're going through data file after data file to see, do these categories make sense? And what's so fascinating about this effort is that when you think of Penn State University, it's like running a city. I mean, we have everything from farms, horse farms, cattle farms, to agricultural lands, to a huge football stadium, one of the largest in the United States, to a basketball arena, to hotels and restaurants and classroom facilities and multitude of different buildings, not to mention very, very sophisticated scientific and research labs that our engineers and scientific and researchers must operate in. So imagine then the spend associated with an organization that is complex like that, everything from agricultural feed to a fleet of trucks and buses and vans, to hospitality management and the travel associated with 25 intercollegiate athletic teams, and then to just making sure that that classroom, as soon as someone like me comes into that classroom and flips on the lights and turns on that projector, everything is in working condition. We can do, we can go ahead and do our thing. So it's a massive task to make sure that we're satisfying that user base, we're buying things as efficiently as possible, and we're also working with really top-notch suppliers who understand what the user's needs are. And sometimes it's not just cost. I mean, many times we talk about cost, quality, and delivery reliability, but in some cases, especially when you're dealing with really top-notch researchers and scientists, and they've got to have the unique measuring devices, unique testing devices, unique equipment for that scientific lab. Cost is not the driver. Truly, cost is not the driver. User-based satisfaction and trying to find, perhaps it's even a single source or sole source supplier that's out there that can, take care of what this research grant requires that scientist to do. So it's really fascinating project. So thanks for asking. I like to encourage my students to not be afraid of going into an operational setting, whether or not that's running first shift of a distribution center or third shift of a manufacturing plant. And I just think it's so awesome because you can see the fruits of your labor. You can see how what you do, how you interact and communicate and talk with individuals and motivate them. You can see how everything comes together regarding motivation of the workforce, the processes and equipment that are used to get the job done. I've got two, and I guess from a business standpoint, business travel, we had in CSCR, we had a custom client whose headquarters was in Brussels, Belgium. So the client said, let's go to this little town called Bruges. So Bruges is about an hour or so north of Brussels. And, it's like stepping back in time, 13th century, that actually was an epicenter for trade way back when. Personally, one of the best places I think I've been is we've been to the BVIs, British Virgin Islands. My husband and I bareboated, and bareboat means boating without a captain. We were the captains of the sailboat, probably at least 4 or 5 times, all the British Virgin Islands, from Tortola to Cooper Petersalt to the Bitter End Yacht Club, and as the last stop toward Anegada. So that was quite interesting trips. Loved it.